February 2004. We are just cruising right along. We're going to be all caught up to September 2024 in no time. That's when I'm recording this. But we're not here to talk about what's happening right now in the present. We're here to talk about the past and what I read in September of 2004. In my last video in this series, I talked about big changes, but slow big changes. So there's going to be some new people on here. You're going to start seeing those changes slowly trickling in, but you're also going to see some of the same stuff that you might be familiar with. Let's jump in. The first book I read in February of 2004, Sten, The Wolf Worlds, by Chris Bunch and Alan Cole. This is the sequel to Sten, which I read in December of 2003. And so in that book, we meet Sten. He lives on, it's science fiction. He lives on this factory world, and I think his family's killed, and he rebels against everything. And I guess by the end of that, spoilers, he goes to work for the Eternal Emperor, basically the guy in charge of everything, who may be immortal. Well, now, the wolf worlds are in this unimportant part of the galaxy, but there's like a ton of piracy going on. So the Eternal Emperor sends two members from his elite squad, the Mantis team, to take care of these pirates. Sten is one of those two. So this is just action, maybe military, science fiction. I must have enjoyed the first one well enough to read the second one. I haven't looked ahead. Don't know if I've read any more. Can't remember. But that's Sten, The Wolf Worlds by Chris Bunch, Alan Cole. If you like action-packed military science fiction, maybe check it out. Next up, The Boys Are Back in Town by Christopher Golden. Now, Christopher Golden, for me, is very hit or miss. He's written some stuff that I've absolutely loved, and he's written some stuff that I didn't like at all. Something recently. Not a fan of. But The Boys Are Back in Town is one of those that I really liked. And our main character is Will James. He's going to his 10th high school reunion, although he's not really excited about it because, his life hasn't turned out the way he wanted. But while he's there, he finds out that one of his old classmates died years and years ago, except that he just got an email from them like a couple of weeks ago. And all of a sudden, his memories are unreliable. He's not sure what reality is. Things that he thought were one way are maybe not that way at all. It's a very intriguing mystery. I like the payoff. It gets into a thing. Trying not to give anything away, because I definitely recommend this book. Gets into a thing that is something I very much enjoy in my fiction. But that's The Boys. I don't want to say. I really liked this. This is one of those that I wouldn't mind rereading. The Boys Are Back in Town, Christopher Golden. After that, we have Atlantis by Greg Donegan. Now, I had some trouble finding this book because it turns out that Greg Donegan is a pseudonym for Bob Mayer. And so trying to find it under Greg Donegan was difficult. But I found it eventually. You can get it under Bob Mayer. He had a bunch of pseudonyms apparently. But anyway, this book, the main character is a guy named Eric Dane, and it deals with I think that there's a whole series, and it's going to deal with all of these different paranormal things. But in the description for this, it talks about there are 3 very mysterious places on Earth: the Bermuda Triangle, the Devil's Sea, which is in Japan, and Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Eric Dane um, was in Cambodia during the war, and something very crazy happened, unexplainable, right near Angkor Wat. And of course, it talks about some of the things, planes that have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle and things that have happened in the Devil's Sea. Well, now some stuff's going down. Eric Dane, who's still working for the government, I guess, is called in to investigate. And I suppose it's going to lead to Atlantis, considering that's the title of the book. But again, there's a whole series. Can't say if I've read any more than this first one, but it is a subject that I'm interested in, these mystery spots throughout the world where allegedly, strange things happen. Atlantis, Greg Donegan, or Bob Mayer. All right, now, here's a first time author for me. In the Dark by Richard Lehman. For those of you who watch all these videos, let's see, how far back did I read? Oh, just in the previous video. I read my first Jack Ketchum, The Lost, and I said, wasn't a huge fan of it. Want to go back eventually and reread it. Might have been in the wrong mood. Wasn't a fan of The Lost. It was a while before I read Jack Ketchum again and fell in love with his stuff. Well, same thing applies to this book. In the Dark by Richard Lehman is our main character is Jane Curry. She's a librarian. She's kind of down on her luck, and she finds an envelope with $50 in it and a message. And it's kind of like a clue. And she follows that clue, and then it leads to more clues and more prizes, things that may make her life better. But then things start to get crazier and crazier, and she gets caught up in bad stuff. It's Richard Lehman. I was not thrilled with this book. Again, I may reread it to see maybe if I was just in the wrong mood. But my personal feeling at the time of reading it was that Jane Carey spent most of the book just making stupid decisions. And I wasn't invested in her character. If you've read it, let me know your thoughts about it down below. Tell me I'm wrong. If I come across a copy of it somewhere, I'll probably pick it up and so I can reread it just to see. Sometimes when I reread something that I didn't like, I end up falling in love with it, but there have been cases where I thought it was just as bad the second time as it was the first time. But we'll see. It's an intriguing premise. I just didn't I don't know. Wasn't into it. I'm just going to keep saying the same words over and over, I guess. In the Dark by Richard Lehman. I followed that up with Sign Language by Jerry Seinfeld. This is a nonfiction comedy book. I believe, just a bunch of his comedy bits. If you're a Seinfeld fan, you'd enjoy this. That's all I have to say about that. Then we have another new to me pair of authors with The Plutonium Blonde by John Zakauer and Lawrence Ghanem. Don't know how to say their names. The first names are easy. But The Plutonium Blonde, our main character is Zachary Nixon Johnson. It's mid 21st century, I believe. He's a private detective. So this is science fiction pulp mystery. I absolutely love the old-fashioned pulp cover of this book and the rest in the series. There's more than just this one. And this is a case where I know I've read the others, because this was fantastic. A woman comes to private investigator Zachary Nixon Johnson, and her name is BB Starr. She's a former exotic dancer who's now like the CEO of the largest corporation in the world, and someone has created a robot double of her, and she wants Johnson to find out who's messing with her. A nice mix, in my opinion, of old-fashioned Private Eye stuff, Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett type stuff, with science fiction. And it's one of those cases, I've seen this quite a bit, where the Private Eye is kind of a throwback. Like cars, there's flying cars, and they're all automatic. You just go in, punch in your destination, or maybe even just tell it, and it'll take you there. But he likes to drive, and the computer in the car will keep telling him how dangerous it is. He shouldn't do it, but he'll override it because he's old fashioned. He wants to be the one in control. Really, really fun book. Plutonian Blonde, John Zakauer, and Lawrence Ganem. Followed that up with Judge Dredd, Dread versus Death by Gordon Rennie. This is a novelization of a video game, and in Mega City 1, there's a plague that is essentially turning them into vampires. So Judge Dredd has to team up with Judge Anderson. What do they call her? She's a psychic. But I can't believe I just totally went blank. Judge Anderson, I guess, is what they call her. And ex-Judge DeMarco. They all team up, and there's a death cult that's going to call up the aspects of death. I forget, but it's basically the four horsemen of their cult, which is Judge Death, Fire, Fear, and Mortis. And so Judge Dredd and his helpers gonna have to take on these guys. Judge Death, very popular character in the Judge Dredd world. I think very much like a video game where you've got the cannon fodder vampiric citizen characters that the judges, if you're playing Judge Dredd, you can go out and you can just slaughter all these vampires till you get to a boss, which I assume is going to be one of these, all leading up to the final boss would be death. But these sort of video game based novelizations on video games, and not just inspired by, I believe, but actually a novelization of the game itself, you see this progression as if it were a game. But I like Judge Dredd. It's fun to read. Judge Dredd, Dread versus Death, Gordon Rennie. After that, we have CSI, Body of Evidence by Max Allan Collins, based on the TV show CSI. And in this one, this office assistant has gone in first thing in the morning to prepare for the workday, and in a printer finds pictures of horrific crimes. So she reports to the police, and now they have to try to figure out who, what, where, when, and how, basically. So the CSI team digs in to solve this mystery. If you like CSI, these books are good. I read them because I'm a fan of the author, Max Allan Collins, and they're fine. Probably better if you, again, are a fan of CSI. That's CSI, Body of Evidence by Max Allan Collins. Then we have another game based on a video game, Batman: Rise of Sin Tzu by Devin Grayson and Flint Dill. And in this story, Sin Tzu, TZU, has conquered a ton of Asia. Doesn't feel that there's any challenge for him anymore till he hears about Batman. So he goes to Gotham, allows himself to be captured and sent to Arkham Asylum, where he recruits Bane, Clayface, and Scarecrow. And they become his lieutenants, leading his armies, take on Batman, Nightwing, Batgirl, and Robin. But again, based on a video game, so you're going to have the heroes going up against a lot of like low-level soldiers, and then going up against the secondary bosses, Bane, Clayface, and Scarecrow, until they get to the final boss, Sin Tzu. but fun stuff. And I think done in the Batman the Animated Series style. I think the game was. I'm not 100% sure. But again, it's fun Batman story. And then the one book that I have, The Science of Superheroes by Lois Gresh and Robert Weinberg, with an introduction by Dean Koontz. And this is nonfiction, and it just takes a scientific look, a fun scientific look at different superheroes. So just going through, we have Chapter 1, Superman. Chapter 2, The Fantastic Four and the Incredible Hulk. So looking at different types of radiation. Batman, Aquaman and the Submariner, Spider-Man, Green Lantern, Ant-Man and the Atom, so growing and shrinking, The Flash, the X-Men, and then some sort of generic, different, it's a science fiction superheroes, so different things. So, yeah, I love this type of book where it'll say, looking at Superman, it'll say, okay, he's come from another planet to our planet. Now he has these abilities to fly. Is it possible? What possible scientific explanation could there be for his ability to fly or his being bulletproof? This is what radiation did to Bruce Banner. What would it actually do to a person? Or, as it says in the inside flap, could a 98-pound weakling become a hulking giant without the radiation? What's the real world way for them to bulk up, become really strong? I love this kind of stuff. So, The Science of Superheroes, Lois Gresh, Robert Weinberg. That was the penultimate book for February of 2004. And the final book that I read in February of 2004 was The Ways of the Samurai by Carol Gaskin and Vince Hawkins. And this essentially is just a nonfiction history of samurai. Just where they came from, how they sprung up, the progression, the different types. Talks about ninja and ronin, and just all the different the history. Again, it's just the history. It's something I'm fascinated with, and so I read it. That was good. If you're interested, a light read. This isn't like super detailed, deep history. It's a lighter book, but I think it's going to hit the highlights of what you're interested in, if this is the type of thing that you are interested in, if that makes sense. All right, that's it. That's everything I read in February of 2004. Again, we saw some things coming back. A comedy book, Batman, Judge Dredd, CSI. But then Richard Lehman, first time on this list. This Plutonian Blonde. I'm not going to try and say the author's names again, but first time for me reading them. Excuse me. Question for this video. Have you read, or would you read, if you haven't already, novels based on video games? Now, I suppose we can break that up into two separate categories. You've got the novelizations, as we have with the two that I mentioned in this video, and have mentioned previously. There's a couple novelizations of Buffy the Vampire Slayer video games. So novelizations or media tie-in stuff. So my understanding with Resident Evil, there's a series of Resident Evil novels, and if I'm not mistaken, and I very well may be, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think every odd numbered book is an adaptation of a game, and every even numbered book is an original story that fills the gap between those games. Not 100% sure about that, but I think that's how it goes. So you have, I guess, kind of the best of both worlds: adaptation of the video game and then original material. I know there's Doom novels, Halo. There's tons and tons of material, books based on video games, and um, probably when I read the Judge Dredd one, I didn't know it was based on a video game. I just wanted to read a Judge Dredd novel, but and that video game may very well be based on a comic book storyline. But I have read some of the Resident Evil stuff. I'm interested in reading the Doom stuff. Was never a big Halo fan, so I don't care about that. But as with everything, my answers always seem to be the same. If it looks interesting and it's well written and entertaining, then I'm into it. And I believe S.D. Perry is the author of the Resident Evil stuff. Not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure it's a Perry. But, and I enjoy their stuff. So, yeah, the Resident Evil stuff's pretty cool. Yeah, so I'm into it. If it's, I'm not going to grab a Halo book because I don't care about Halo. But I would definitely read Doom. I'm trying to think of other video games that have novels. Myst. I know there's Myst books out there. I wonder if there's Silent Hill. I don't think I've ever seen Silent Hill novel. But you get the right, like, creepy, atmospheric author to write some Silent Hill stuff. That could be pretty interesting, I think. But what do you think? Have you read any books either adapting or simply based on video games? What did you think of them if you have? If you haven't, would you? Or if you wouldn't, why not? Does it not interest you? All that stuff, let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. I try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. And if you care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronin5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, fuzzy animals, is EricSmith5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH5757. On Blue Sky, I am @ELSmith. And that's all I've got for you this week. So until next week, read more books.